Well, good morning, YouTube family. This is Reverend Wendy Hamilton with the Community of Compassion joining you for our weekly Spirit Talk. And today we are going to talk about all class everything. Um, I appreciate you guys, of course, for joining me every week, for tuning in, for being supportive of this broadcast. I look forward to it on Sundays. It really keeps me connected with community. It keeps me connected with ministry when so much of my life is, taking care of my regular day job and the commitments that I have. It's always refreshing to know that I have that Sunday broadcast coming up that's going to help me get recharged and refreshed and ready for a new week. So, how are you doing today? Just checking in. We are at the 22nd of November, coming up on Thanksgiving this week. Are you ready? Have you shopped and are you going to be safe and conduct your Thanksgiving either remotely with family? That's what the encouragement is that we not travel, not do big, large Thanksgiving gatherings this year. And I know some people are really concerned about that. We are desperately trying to hold on to some semblance of normal. But I promise you that if we, you know, endure this momentary inconvenience and this just sort of fleeting time where things aren't like they normally are. I believe with all my heart that eventually we will get back to normal for what we consider to be normal. So I do hope that you all are taking precautions, but also very intent still on acknowledging and celebrating Thanksgiving because we all have something to be thankful for. We have to find things to be grateful for in this moment. And I can just speak for myself. I've had a pretty challenging week this week, been under the weather quite a bit. And so I am actually, grateful to be able to be broadcasting with you all this morning and, sharing some encouragement and some hope and some motivation to get us through this next week. So that being said, let's talk a little bit today about class. And when I say class, I'm talking about, working class versus poor working class versus ruling class versus elite class. I've been seeing a lot of that lately, and it has made me wonder about why we haven't made as much progress in having those conversations. Every year we talk about, the billionaires and oligarchs and all the monies that they have, and then those of us who might be working class or less than working class at this point, just human citizens, seeming to get the shorter end of the stick, right? So, in thinking about Congress, for instance, I made a post this morning and I said, it would be really great if we had more people in Congress who had experienced some measure of struggle or poverty or homelessness or even lived paycheck to paycheck. It seems like, and I could be wrong, but it seems like there is such a lack of understanding and compassion in our leadership for those who are considered less than, or as the Bible describes, the least of these. And that's most of us. I'm not just talking about people who are unhoused or people who are struggling with keeping a job. I'm talking about just regular, everyday citizens such as ourselves who are just doing our best to get by, to achieve, to work, to pay our bills, to put food on the table, just those basic needs that so many people cannot even meet right now, even if they wanted to. We know this pandemic has changed and shifted everything, and it's shifted our culture, but I don't feel like our leadership has rose up in response to the amount of devastation, quite frankly, that we're facing in this moment. And I'm really honestly trying to figure out how they are not standing in the midst of the congressional hall right now, talking about and discussing how to rescue us, to rescue the regular people. I don't know how you see the food lines. If anybody has been online this week and seen the sheer number of cars that are lining up to get food. I think I saw one in Dallas, and and in other places. It is overwhelming, and it is astonishing for a country such as ours to have people in those dire straits and not be compelled and willing to help them. Where is our humanity? Where are our hearts? We cannot let our people fall by the wayside like this when we had the means in this country to not let this happen. The back and forth that Congress has been having regarding stimulus payments is an abomination, in my opinion. What are we even fighting about and over? If we have to fight and argue over whether or not to help people with their basic needs based on a situation that has put them in peril that was not their choosing or not their fault, makes me livid. Livid. No one asked for this pandemic. No one asked for this economic crisis. And so those old arguments of, well, we're not going to just hand out money to people. You have to earn it, or, you have to work hard or pull up your bootstraps and all that foolishness. All of those arguments are moot right now. They're moot. Because people are not in these situations because they have chosen to be there. They are there because circumstances beyond their control have put them there. We need to be willing to recognize that and to help and to offer help. This is a different situation than we have ever encountered, or at least in my lifetime. I know there's been pandemics and depression and things like that. I was not alive during those times, and I respect that those were just as devastating. I can only speak for what's happening now, and it is so hard. It is hard to watch. It is hard to get my mind around. And I'm just wondering, what will it take for our leadership to have a crisis of consciousness that suggests we have to do something right away? And believe me, it's not all of our leadership. I do see some of you tweeting and using your voice and your platforms to call this out. And all of that is necessary because that is activism. But how do we move from activism to action? It's one thing to call it out. It's one thing to observe it. It's one thing to say this needs to change. I even saw a congressional member saying Congress must act. Sir, your Congress, what are you saying to your colleagues? Why are you putting this out here on Twitter? Why are you not talking to your individual colleagues and saying, guys, we have to do something? It's clear to the rest of us that Congress has to do something, but they're not doing it. And I don't know what it's going to take for them to get over whatever the obstacles are that they are claiming to have to get something done. Like, what are we going to do? Because we have classes of people who are struggling. And that's what brought me to this topic and my concern today. I thought, now, is it the case that many of our congressional leaders have come to Congress sort of as a second career, basically. They've worked in the private sector or even the nonprofit or public sector, but they've made their careers. They've done what they needed to do, and then they decided, to take a route of public service and run for office, which is great, okay? But I'm wondering how many of them, prior to coming to Congress, ever had to struggle, or if they can remember that. And if they do remember it, can they then better relate to those of us who are struggling now? I mean, you shouldn't necessarily have to experience something personally in order for you to have compassion. But, a lot of studies have shown that if you have had a particular experience, then you resonate more deeply with those who are going through it. And so that for me is what I am actually praying for in this moment, that they call upon their better nature and their better angels and put this partisan bickering aside and their differences and the ideas about who's going to get the most credit. At this point, none of that matters. What matters is we demonstrate to the world that we actually care about our citizens, because we're not doing a very good job of that right now. If you are someone who is wealthier or rich, this is not a situation where you can look at it and say, well, if other people had done what I've done and taken the route that I've taken, then they wouldn't be in this position. That is completely the opposite of what is happening right now. This is unprecedented, and unprecedented situations and times call for unprecedented measures. Grant the money, go ahead and approve it, figure it out later on in terms of who's going to get the credit or who it's going to benefit and who it doesn't. The lack of money, of cash, of physical cash being readily available, is not an issue in this country. We have money. We have money. And I know this is kind of separate, but I want to bring this up because I saw it yesterday. I was watching a lot of sports. I love college football. And so yesterday I was watching a lot of, football, but I was also seeing announcements about new contracts for athletes that were being extended or amended. And I saw this one contract for a gentleman who is going to get $85 million over the next 4 years. So his contract renewal, I think, was for 4 years at $85 million. That's one individual. One individual is going to get, so that breaks down roughly to, 21 plus $21 million a year for one person. That money is going to come from somewhere. If we have $21 million to give one basketball player every year, you mean to tell me that we don't have enough money available to us to fund stimulus payments for the next 6 months at least for our fellow citizens? I don't believe it. I don't believe it, because facts are contrary to what we're being told. It's just not possible. LeBron James, I love LeBron James. And LeBron James is someone who has struggled in his lifetime. He's been homeless. They've been on food stamps. His story is there, for many to read about. He was raised by his, single mother, and they really had a tough time. And so that experience informs LeBron James right now in his philanthropy and his giving back. But I bring him up to say, I also heard yesterday that LeBron James makes $93 million a year. $93 million a year, again, for one person. Talented philanthropist doing the right thing, in my mind, for somebody who, started out with nothing and now has essentially everything, wonderful family man and all that. But separate and apart from all that, The fact that he is able to make $93 million a year just reaffirms for me that there's money available. We have cash. It's available. We just need to figure out our priorities in terms of who this money um, and how this money gets distributed. I can't even imagine. Could you imagine our teachers, for instance, making $1 million a year? It doesn't have to be 93 or 20. Can you imagine what our educational outcomes might be like if our teachers were making $1 million a year to start? I can't even fathom it. And I'm just using teachers because, of all of the professions, we know how underpaid they are. But there's money out here and it's available. We have to get back in touch with our humanity. I posted earlier, poverty is not a partisan issue. It's a human one. And we have to get back to the place where we are in touch with our humanity and where it's never okay that we have people who are having to determine whether or not they are going to eat or pay their mortgage or their rent. We have that right now. So my hope today is that not everything has to be a partisan, um, heated, tension-filled, petty back and forth about what to do. Doing the right thing is never wrong. Doing the right thing is never wrong. And in this instance, getting people money is the right thing to do. So I'm just, one simple lone voice myself, but I am begging and pleading for our congressional leaders to put aside whatever their differences are and see what's happening to our country on a human level and do something about it. We're losing people unnecessarily. And even with the COVID-19 and the rapid spread that's happening right now, we're hearing news of vaccines that are going to become available soon, within the next month or so. But even with those, there's a conversation about, well, how much are they going to cost? Who are they going to make them available to? And there are people that aren't going to be able to afford them. How about we just make it available, free and accessible to everybody? Why do we have to withhold good from anybody? It's not necessary. That is a scarcity mindset, and it is one that has impacted our politics in particular for far too long. So I'm asking you guys today, can you please call upon your legislators, use whatever platforms you have, use your voice, lift it up, because it's only going to be the people, us, who are going to make a difference in hopefully seeing some righteous action taking place. Justice is love in action, and that means not just talking about it, but being about it. So I appreciate all of you, and I thank you for tuning in today. It is so vital and critical that we do our best to support those among us who can't support themselves, but also to hold our leaders accountable so that they too are being responsible citizens, responsible human beings, retouching their humanity on the inside and caring for our people, because history will not look well on us if we let our people fall by the wayside. Let's stand up. Let's be a champion for all classes of people, all class, everything. Let's do it. Thank you. Have a wonderful week. Happy Thanksgiving. Find something to be grateful for. And I'll see you next week. Have a good one.